Hello everyone, Find Me in LA here. Hope y'all are having a wonderful day so far. In today's video, I'm going to pull a Bizarro from the video where I talked about my least favorite Horror Nights year. So now I'm going to talk about my favorite year of Horror Nights. I thought it was only fair that after making a video of me complaining, I would balance it out by talking about something that I love.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
So what is my favorite year of Halloween Horror Nights? Well, I do have a clear answer. I've experienced a total of 8 different HHNs, and I do have them all ranked based on how much I enjoyed them, but ever since I've attended this particular year's event, it's always been on the top spot, and no other HHN after it has even held a candle to this one. And the HHN that I'm referring to is 2016. Now, just like my 2021 video, I'm not going to do a traditional review, but rather more of a retrospective. So before I talk about my actual thoughts on the 2016 event, I want to give you guys a little bit of a history lesson. I wanted to go back in time and discuss the announcement season during 2016 and how it affected my expectations. The very first maze they announced that year was The Exorcist on April 26, which at the time was the earliest that Universal released an official Horror Nights announcement, and that alone already skyrocketed my hype. Universal and John Murdy especially have been wanting to do The Exorcist for a while, so for them to finally make a maze out of that movie was so exciting at the time. After that, there was quite a long period of just silence from Horror Nights, but it only lasted up until July 6th when they announced Halloween, Hell Comes to Haddonfield. The last Halloween attraction from just the previous year once held the title of the highest guest-rated maze in HHN Hollywood history, so naturally they had to bring it back for 2016 and have it based off of the classic sequel, Halloween 2. About 3 weeks later, they announced that Michael Myers won't be alone at Horror Nights and will be joined by 3 other horror movie slashers. Both Freddy vs. Jason and Texas Chainsaw Massacre Blood Brothers were announced on the same day, bringing together the iconic Titans of Terror for the first time at Horror Nights. I remember having my mind blown after first seeing all of this. I grew up watching these guys' movies, so I was ecstatic to go through all of their mazes. In 2015, they had a Dark Christmas Scare Zone, which ended up being a fan favorite, and coincidentally, after the event ended that year, Universal released Krampus, a Christmas horror movie from the director of Trick or Treat. Ever since then, a lot of fans wanted the film, or just the character of Krampus in general, to make an appearance for the 2016 event. Well, they asked and they received, after Universal announced a Krampus maze on August 4th. And if all that wasn't cool enough, American Horror Story, which was another highly fan-demanded IP, was announced on the 16th of August. They also revealed the theme of the Terror Tram via strange videos on social media before an official announcement from Universal and Crypt TV, which I thought was a really cool way to generate hype. They introduced an original character by the name of Hollywood Harry, aka Kudos the Clown, aka Harold Kapowitz, aka the Phantom Clown, aka whatever else John Murdy wants to call him. But I love the idea of an original concept for the theme of the tram. So after the reveal of the entire lineup, which included a lot of exciting heavy hitters, tons of fans, including myself, have never been this hyped for Halloween Horror Nights. Now 2016 was my 3rd time going to Horror Nights, and back then I was still somewhat of a scaredy cat. So basically what I would do was watch the POV walkthrough videos on YouTube days before actually experiencing the mazes in person, so I somewhat know what to expect. At the time I didn't really care a whole lot about spoilers, and I also felt like watching something on my phone didn't really do the actual mazes justice. But still, I always prepare myself by watching those videos. But this is where we fast forward to September 13th, Employee Preview Night. For some of you that don't know what this is, they're just basically glorified dress rehearsals for the scare actors and all the operations people. And Universal invites all their employees to basically be, like guinea pigs for all the mazes. And luckily, a family member of mine who used to work at Universal invited me. And of course I was very excited, but at the same time I was pretty nervous. Since I was going to be one of the very first people to experience the mazes that year, I had absolutely no idea what to expect. Not only did I have no idea where the scares and the mazes were going to be, but I also didn't know which mazes looked cool or which ones looked like they were going to suck. So for the first time ever, I was going to walk into everything blindly. It was a little bit past 7 o'clock when I entered the front gates, so I did miss a little bit of the opening ceremony. The first scare zone that I entered through was the Purge. In fact, all the scare zones that year were Purge themed. There was even a cool pathway called the Gauntlet of Fear, and it was sort of like this mega scare zone slash outdoor mini maze hybrid, and it was really cool. You entered through the Universal Plaza area and then continued in the Parisian Courtyard, which is typically a maze location, and then it ended all the way down in French Street. It was the first thing that I did that night, and it was a great way to start the night off. And overall, I just really liked the approach they took with the scare zones, which was something that I didn't expect since I'm not really a big Purge fan. I feel like this should have been the proper send-off to the Purge at Horror Nights. But instead, they decided to milk the series dry and give us 5 more Purge things. But I digress. Anyway, we then made our way down to the Metro sets, where we faced even more Purge scare actors along the way inside what would later become the Toxic Tunnel. The first maze we did in the backlot was Krampus, and right off the bat, the facade absolutely blew me away because of how beautiful it was. I walked inside, and all the sets themselves were also insane. For the most part, you're inside of the family's house from the movie, but every single room was so decked out, and there was a lot going on and a lot to see. And there was also a bit of sensory overload in some areas. For example, you enter a kitchen with a bunch of gingerbread men and the whole room actually smelled like cookies. They also had a room where you're supposedly outdoors during a blizzard and they blow ice cold air. Stuff like that just made the maze so much more immersive. One thing about Krampus that really caught me off guard was how intense it was. I was expecting it to be a bit more comedic and silly, and there definitely were some funny and campy elements, but some of the scares here actually got me real good. My favorite scare here was Krampus busting out of the fireplace and nearly biting my ankles. I also really liked the different puppets they had here. They gave me major Gremlins vibes. The entire maze was just so beautifully made, and I had very little to no issues with this one. I walked out of Krampus with a really big smile on my face. The next maze we did was Freddy vs. Jason, which is the one that I was most excited for at the time, and it met my expectations. I loved it so much. So many great moments and so many fun set pieces. You could tell that everyone poured their heart and soul into this one. I also love how they changed up the ending every now and then. Sometimes you see Freddy being the winner, other times Jason would be the winner. I'm surprised they didn't attempt to do anything similar to that scene in other mazes. But overall, this maze felt like a giant love letter to both the Nightmare and Friday franchises. It was just spectacular. Right after Freddy vs. Jason, we went straight to American Horror Story, which I remember was the maze that I waited the longest for during preview night. This house was based off Murder House, Freak Show, and Hotel. I really liked the transitions between the different seasons with the arches playing the intros. The Murder House section was really long. It felt like it took up almost half of the whole maze tent, but I liked all the scenes they recreated and all the characters that they had. They even included a character that was entirely cut from the show. Freak Show is my favorite of the 3 that they chose to recreate for the maze, but the Freak Show segment felt pretty short, which is kind of underwhelming, but for that little bit of space that they had, they managed to pack quite a lot. Everything from the freak scare actors to that awesome circus tent to the cool tableau scene with Neil Patrick Harris. It all made the entire segment feel so alive and exciting. And finally, there was Hotel. The hotel part of the maze was just okay in my opinion. I felt like they could have done a bit more or maybe even chosen better scenes to recreate. As a whole, American Horror Story was pretty solid. However, I didn't fall head over heels with it like I did with Freddy vs. Jason or Krampus. After we completed everything in the back lot, we then went to the lower lot. We then did The Exorcist, which was located right next to the Mummy ride. And that was another maze that I was really excited for. But after experiencing the whole maze for the very first time, I was vastly disappointed with it. The movie itself is pretty unfit to be a Horror Nights maze because if you think about it, the main threat of The Exorcist is a 12-year-old girl, and the majority of the movie takes place in a single bedroom. So obviously the creative team had to work the way around that and take some creative liberties. So I was very curious to see how they will pull it off. And it just really threw me off when I saw that 50% of the maze consisted of black walls. I walked out of The Exorcist feeling sad because I felt like they could have done so much more and could have been a lot more imaginative with it, especially with the structure of the house. This was literally how the maze went. You walk into the living room and then you enter a dark hallway. You then enter the bedroom for the first time. Then there is more black hallways. You then enter the bedroom again with some slight altercations with the room. And then you see more black walls. And then you're in the bedroom again. And then once again, you walk through dark hallways. And then you enter, yup, you guessed it, the bedroom again. And then finally, you go through, yup, you guessed it again, more black walls. My initial reaction to all of that was just pure frustration. The whole thing felt creatively inept in my eyes. I just thought one of the most iconic and influential horror movies of all time deserved a lot better. After that, we actually skipped Halloween and actually made our way straight back up to the upper lot to do the Terror Tram, but sadly we were too late since it was already closed by the time we got up there. So after that, we then headed to Texas Chainsaw Massacre Blood Brothers. Now this is my first Texas Chainsaw experience at Horror Nights, so I was looking forward to seeing Leatherface and his family. I like the different scenes that they had for the maze. They were supposed to make an original story that isn't necessarily based on a certain Texas Chainsaw movie, but just pulled a lot of inspiration from some of the films. And I really got that impression, and I really enjoyed that because they were able to like go creative and original with everything. Fun fact, this was the first maze to be built next to Waterworld. So back then, I was really curious to see what it would be like as a maze location. And it's a pretty cool maze location, it's just too bad it's not under a typical black tent that all the other mazes have. If you look up, you could see some of the Waterworld tarps, which can break the immersion for some people, but I personally don't mind it. As long as the maze is good and I'm enjoying what I'm seeing, I won't even notice it. And thankfully, Texas Chainsaw was good. Oh, and the song that they played at the end of the maze, certified banger.
The stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas.
After that, we did the Walking Dead attraction, which was brand new at the time. And it was actually my very first time experiencing it that night. Supposedly they doubled the amount of walkers during Horror Nights, but when I went, I was never overwhelmed with the amount of scare actors or anything. But it was a decent walkthrough. It was a cool little attraction that you could have taken newbies to before they eventually experienced Horror Nights, you know, the real deal. Now, it was at this point of the night where we realized we only had 1 hour left before they closed and ended preview night. So we went back to the back lot and did a couple mazes a second time, and then we went to the lower lot again and finally did Halloween, Hell Comes to Haddonfield, which was located right next to Jurassic Park. If I remember correctly, this was the maze that I was least excited for that year. That's not to say I wasn't excited to see Michael Myers again, it's just that I saw him the previous year and then all the other mazes were just brand new to me, therefore I was more excited for those. And shame on me because I was absolutely blown away by this house. They basically took everything that worked so well in the previous Halloween maze and cranked it up to 11. The scares were really good, the scenes they recreated were a lot of fun, and that ending was flat out amazing. It is crazy how overlooked this maze is. I don't see a whole lot of people talk about this one. It's just so well made, it's honestly on my top 3 of all time. So when we left the park after doing all of the mazes, my initial impressions were overwhelmingly positive. I walked out of the park thinking that that was the best Horror Nights that I've ever experienced, and walking into everything blindly definitely enhanced my experience. I also thought that if the event was that good during a team member preview, I couldn't even imagine what it would be like during the official run. Fast forward to mid-October, and I returned to Halloween Horror Nights. 2016 was actually the first year I did Horror Nights for more than one night. It's a really fun experience doing it a second time, and there are tons of reasons as to why that is. First of all, you get to have a few more cool interactions with scare actors, you get to see a couple more scares that you probably missed on your first run, therefore giving you a better experience, and to add to that, you might change your opinion on a certain house because of that second run through. So yeah, if y'all ever get the chance to go more than once, I say you definitely do so. But anyway, so begins round 2 of Horror Nights 2016 for me. I already sort of made like a mental ranking after my initial experiences with the mazes, but after experiencing them a couple more times, I definitely switched up some spots. I've especially warmed up to The Exorcist. After that initial brick wall to the face and actually knowing what to expect this time around, I walked through The Exorcist a couple more times and I enjoyed it a bit more. I enjoyed the aspects of it that I did like a lot more. It has really cool special effects, that I can't deny. The sets that weren't black hallways were well designed, and I did love the sound design and the music playing throughout the maze. And I also did warm up to the black walls a bit because at least there was some stuff going on in them, like that Captain Howdy projections and some of the Reagan puppets looking pretty cool as well. So ultimately, the good outweighed the bad for me this time, and I can confidently say that The Exorcist overall was a solid maze. American Horror Story, however, went down a couple spots in my ranking. But that's not because I liked it less, I just enjoyed the other mazes a bit more. And after going through it a couple more times, I thought it could have been a bit scarier. And I also thought the maze itself could have been a bit longer. They definitely could have used more space, especially considering they were covering 3 whole seasons worth of material. For a short while, my favorite maze of the year was Freddy vs. Jason, simply because both characters hold a special place in my heart. But after giving it some thought, I had to get the top spot to Halloween. I truly believe Hell Comes to Haddonfield was one of the most well-crafted mazes we've ever gotten here in Hollywood. Everyone always talks about the one in 2015, but the sequel maze is so slept on. So after doing the mazes a bunch of times, I came up with an official ranking that I was very confident in. I had a great time on both nights, and it's mostly because of the top-notch quality of the actual event. Not a single bad maze, all of them range from really good to god tier. I could tell they put so much effort into each maze. Usually they'll pour more heart and soul in certain mazes than others, and then some will get the short end of the stick, but that wasn't the case here. I remember the scare actors doing a really good job, as always. And again, this was my first year that I went to Horror Nights more than once, with my first trip being employee previews, so I walked into everything blindly, which is always the ideal way to experience anything brand new in my opinion. So on top of the great memories that were made, everything else on a technical level just came together so perfectly. It was like lightning in a bottle, and all of that is why 2016 will always have a special place in my heart. Oh, and by the way, I didn't watch the Jabberwocky show in 2016 because they suck. Good night everyone, see you all in the fog.